Architect Ethan was about to give the poor vegetable boy a few dollars, but on that fateful rainy night in Philadelphia, he stumbled upon a deadly secret and became the reluctant father of 3 children. It all began in a downpour. The city's old cobblestone streets were soaked, reflecting the jaundiced glow of the streetlights. Ethan, sharp in a tailored suit, was hurrying home when he stopped short. Under the awning of a closed shop, a scrawny boy was huddled, using his small body to shield 2 worn-out baskets. Thinking the boy was just an unlucky street vendor, Ethan reached for his wallet. But at that exact moment, a powerful gust of wind blew past, knocking one of the baskets over. What spilled out wasn't vegetables, but a pile of rags. And then a faint, sharp cry pierced through the sound of the falling rain. Ethan's heart stopped. He rushed over, kneeling beside the basket. Beneath the tattered cloth, a tiny, red, wrinkled newborn's face trembled from the cold. In astonishment, he looked at the other basket, the one the boy, Liam, was clutching to his chest like a precious treasure. "My God, what are you doing?" Ethan exclaimed. The boy looked up, his eyes a mixture of fear and defiance. "Please, don't." Without a second thought, Ethan tore off his expensive coat and draped it over the overturned basket. "Come with me, quickly," he said firmly. "You can't stay here." He helped Liam up, shielding him with his umbrella. The boy hesitated, staring at the strange man, then gave a slight nod and followed, shivering. Ethan had no idea he wasn't just leading a boy to shelter, but stepping into a storm that would change his life forever. Liam flinched slightly at his touch, but didn't pull away. He looked up, his clear, rain-soaked eyes boring into Ethan's, as if trying to read his entire soul in a single moment. You're not going to call the cops, are you?" Liam's voice was weak, but laced with suspicion. It wasn't just a question, it was a challenge. Ethan's heart ached. He knelt to meet the boy's gaze, ignoring the dirty water soaking the knees of his expensive trousers. "I promise," he said, looking directly into the boy's eyes. "I won't call anyone. I just want to get you and the baby somewhere dry. Okay?" The sincerity in Ethan's voice seemed to break through Liam's defenses. The boy gave a faint, almost imperceptible nod. Ethan's luxury sedan had never held such cargo. The warmth from the heating system fogged the windows, enveloping the 3 of them in a private world, sealed off from the stormy night outside. Ethan drove in silence, his hands gripping the steering wheel, his mind racing. "What the hell am I doing?" He glanced at Liam. The boy had fallen asleep from exhaustion. His head slumped on his chest, but his hands were still protectively curled towards the 2 baskets in the back seat, as if even in sleep his guardian instincts never rested. It was then that Ethan understood. He wasn't just giving 3 children a ride out of the rain. He was carrying their entire world on his shoulders. As the car turned onto the familiar gravel road, leading to an old farm, Liam jolted awake. "Where are we?" he asked, his voice groggy and confused, as he saw a structure of glass and rusted iron emerge before them. "Someplace safe," Ethan answered gently. "An old greenhouse. Don't worry, no one will bother us here." He carried both baskets, feeling their weight, the weight of responsibility. He pushed open the creaking door, revealing a forgotten space that smelled of damp earth and decaying leaves. He switched on his phone's flashlight, the beam sweeping past broken pots and settling on an old wooden table. He carefully placed the baskets upon it. The weak cry started again from one of the baskets. Liam immediately rushed to it, his small hands trembling as he pulled back the cloth. Ethan stood there, in the singular light of his phone, watching a 9-year-old boy clumsily soothe a tiny infant. The rain still hammered outside, but inside the greenhouse, an almost sacred silence had fallen. This was no longer a ruin. It had become a sanctuary, a fragile haven built on a boy's courage and a stranger's impulsive decision. The faint light from Ethan's phone illuminated the wooden table, turning it into a makeshift stage. On it, Liam moved with astonishing focus. The cries from one of the babies, a girl Ethan would later learn was named Lily, grew louder, a heartbreaking sound that echoed in the quiet greenhouse. Ethan stepped closer, not out of curiosity, but from an urge to help. He looked inside the basket, and his heart felt as if it were being squeezed. It wasn't just a pile of rags. Liam had done his best to create a nest. He had lined the bottom with torn cardboard to fight the cold, layered with scraps of fabric, a frayed old sweater, and a thin blanket, probably his most prized possession. Everything was damp, but the careful arrangement showed extraordinary love and effort. His attention was drawn back to Liam. The boy was fumbling with a tiny bottle containing only a little cloudy, cold rice water. His hands shook as he tried to guide the bottle to the baby's mouth, but Lily cried harder, pushing it away. Desperation was plain on Liam's young face. He set the bottle down, awkwardly picked the baby up, and held her against his own bony chest, rocking her gently. "Shh, Lily. Big Brother's here. I'm right here. Don't cry." His whispered voice was soothing, the voice of a responsible, loving caregiver. Big Brother. The words echoed in Ethan's mind, dispelling all wild theories. The truth emerged, simple yet more brutal than anything he could have imagined. This wasn't a kidnapping. This was a struggle for survival. "Liam," Ethan asked, his voice hoarse with emotion, "are you all alone, taking care of them?" Liam looked up, his eyes tired but hiding nothing. He nodded, a single, firm gesture. "Yes," he said, his voice steady. "I'm the oldest." After Lily had quieted and drifted into a fitful sleep in her basket, silence returned to the greenhouse. The only sounds were the steady drumming of rain on the glass roof and the chattering of Liam's teeth. He was shivering, not just from the cold, but from exhaustion. His thin, soaked shirt clung to his bony frame. "Liam," Ethan said softly, taking off his own damp suit jacket and hanging it on a rusty hook. "Your turn. You need to get out of those wet clothes, or you'll get sick." He found an old but dry burlap sack in a corner, dusted it off, and laid it on the table. "I'll help you get dry." Liam hesitated. He wrapped his arms around his shoulders in an instinctive, defensive gesture. For a long time, no one had cared if he was wet or cold. This sudden care was both moving and terrifying. "It's okay," Ethan reassured him, his voice patient. "Just take off your shirt." Finally, Liam nodded. He turned his back to Ethan and awkwardly pulled at his shirt. The wet fabric stuck to his skin, and he struggled for a moment. Ethan stepped forward to help. "Let me." He gently took the hem of the shirt and pulled it over the boy's head, and that's when he saw it. In the cold light of the phone's flashlight, on Liam's skinny right shoulder blade, was a scar. But it wasn't an ordinary scar. It was raised and distorted, the young skin ravaged by a terrible heat. A mottled black mixed with the angry red of an old burn. But through the horrific disfigurement, Ethan could still make out the faint lines of a tattoo, a sunflower. The air was sucked from Ethan's lungs. He froze. It wasn't just any sunflower. He knew that symbol intimately. He had seen it hundreds, thousands of times. He had seen it on blueprints, on business cards, on multi-million-dollar contracts. It was carved into the massive marble slab in the main lobby of the headquarters he himself had designed. It was the logo of Aethelred Corp. An icy current shot down Ethan's spine. His world tilted. The impossible connection between the prestigious construction firm he partnered with and the savage burn on a beggar child's back suddenly materialized, irrational but undeniable. The building he was so proud of, the symbol of his success, now carried a different meaning, something dark and sinister. Liam felt Ethan's dead silence. He quickly tried to pull down the torn sleeve of his shirt to cover the mark of shame, but it was too late. He flinched, bracing himself for a question, for judgment. Ethan took a deep breath, trying to keep his voice from trembling, though a tempest raged within him. Aethelred Corp, he whispered, his voice barely audible. Liam, why do you have this symbol on your shoulder? Hearing the name Aethelred Corp from the stranger's lips, Liam jolted as if struck by lightning. He took a step back, a primal fear flaring in his eyes, overwhelming his exhaustion and the cold. He frantically pulled his wet shirt down, hiding the scar as if concealing a terrible crime. How do you know? He stammered, his voice a tangled mess of confusion and terror. Ethan didn't answer right away. He slowly picked up the dry burlap sack he had prepared, moved closer, and draped it over Liam's trembling shoulders. It was a gesture of care, a silent promise that the boy was safe. I designed their headquarters, Ethan said, his voice low, each word landing with the weight of a stone. That sunflower, I looked at it every day for 2 years. That truth, instead of frightening Liam further, seemed to shatter his final wall of defense. He stopped bracing himself. He collapsed onto an overturned wooden crate, his small shoulders slumping under the weight of memory. My mom, Liam began, his voice a broken whisper. She used to work there, in accounting. Ethan listened in silence, his heart pounding in his chest. She was good with numbers, Liam continued, his eyes fixed on some distant point. So good she saw. Things she wasn't supposed to see. Numbers that didn't add up in shipments going all over the world. At first, she thought it was money, but it wasn't. He looked up at Ethan, and in his eyes, Ethan saw a truth more horrific than anything he could have imagined. It was people, Liam said. They were using the company's shipping routes to traffic people. A wave of nausea rose in Ethan's throat. His blueprints, the corridors he designed, the loading docks he calculated, all part of this criminal machine. They said my mom was killed in a robbery. Liam's voice turned cold, devoid of any childish emotion. But she wasn't. They killed her for what she found. And after the funeral, they came for me. Who came for you? Ethan asked, though he feared the answer. Donovan Reed's men, Liam replied. He's the most powerful man in the corporation. Everyone's afraid of him. They took me to a place, they called it the facility. The name sounded grotesque. Ethan felt his skin crawl. All the kids there were branded with the sunflower, Liam said, his hand unconsciously touching his shoulder through the sack, like cattle. I tried to burn it off with a hot piece of iron, but it wouldn't go away. Ik knelt again, forcing Liam. He was no longer a famous architect, and Liam was no longer a beggar child. They were just two human beings caught in the same storm. Liam, listen to me, Ethan began, his voice firm without a trace of hesitation. I don't care who Donovan Reed is or how powerful Aethelred Corp is. I won't let them hurt you again. I will take all 3 of you somewhere safe. I promise. Liam looked up, his eyes searching Ethan's for any sign of a lie. but he found only sincerity and determination. A single tear, the first since they met, rolled down his dirty cheek. It was a tear of relief, of finally being able to share the burden. But then that relief was quickly replaced by an even greater terror. He glanced at the two baskets where Lily and Chloe slept, and his whole body began to shake again. Safe, he repeated, the word tasting bitter. Nowhere will be safe, not until he gets what he wants. What does he want? Ethan asked. To silence you? Liam shook his head violently, fear making his voice urgent. It's not just me. I escaped the facility. But I didn't leave alone. I took them with me. He pointed toward the two babies. Why? Why them? Liam took a deep breath, as if preparing to speak a great taboo. Because Donovan needs children like Lily and Chloe, newborns, healthy and pure. A dark premonition crept into Ethan's mind. Needs them for what? For testing, Liam whispered, and the word echoed in the greenhouse like a curse. He has this crazy project called Project Nova. He believes he can change the future with some kind of gene serum, a drug to make people stronger, smarter, but it needs infant hosts for testing. Most of the babies they bring in, they don't survive. Ethan's world collapsed again. This was no longer about human trafficking. This was something more monstrous, more inhuman. He wasn't just hiding a witness. He was protecting two innocent lives from being turned into lab rats. Liam's sacrifice now took on a whole new meaning. He hadn't just run to save himself. He had risked his life to save two other children from a fate worse than death. Ethan shot to his feet, a chill running down his spine. This greenhouse, their temporary refuge, suddenly felt terrifyingly unsafe. They weren't just hiding. They were being hunted. We have to get out of here, Ethan said, his voice tight with urgency. Right now. The nighttime drive to rural Virginia was a tense race against time and unseen phantoms. The villa, a place Ethan normally used to escape the hustle of his career, now served as a makeshift fortress. It was hidden among rolling hills and groves of trees, isolated and private. After rushing the three children into a warm room, feeding them what little food he could find, and ensuring they were sound asleep, Ethan finally had a moment to face the storm inside him. He was not a fighter. He was an architect. His only weapons were his mind, his drawings, his logic, and he decided he would use those very weapons against his enemy. He entered his archives. The large, tidy room was filled with neatly arranged blueprint scrolls, intricate architectural models, and rows of hard drives containing data from hundreds of projects. This was his kingdom, a place where everything was orderly, every detail calculated. But now, he saw it with new eyes. Did any of these structures hide a dark secret? He started with the Ethelred Corp headquarters project, flipping through every drawing, scrutinizing every detail. Nothing was out of the ordinary. Everything was perfect, clean, exactly as Donovan Reed had demanded. A symbol of power and transparency. Desperation began to set in. Had he designed anything else for them? He racked his brain. And then he remembered. A small, almost forgotten contract, signed a few years ago. It was filed under an innocuous name, Storage and Processing Facility Upgrade Project. A boring job he had delegated mostly to junior engineers, only reviewing the final drawings for his signature. His hands trembled as he typed the project name into his computer. The CAD files appeared. At first glance, they were just a complex network of pipes, tanks, and technical rooms deep underground. Directly beneath one of Aethelred's old warehouses, on the outskirts of Philadelphia. But now, with what Liam had told him, Ethan saw details he had previously overlooked. The ventilation system wasn't standard. It was a medical-grade air filtration system, far more than necessary for a storage facility. The storage rooms were numbered, had drains in the floors, and were fitted with reinforced steel doors with electronic locks. They didn't look like storage. They looked like cells. And then he saw it, a separate area, enclosed by thick, soundproof walls with its own dedicated power and gas lines. On the blueprint, it was vaguely labeled Technical Research Area. But now, Ethan could read its true name. Laboratory. His throat went dry. He zoomed in on the bottom corner of the drawing. There, clear and sharp, was his signature. The silence in the archive was heavy, broken only by the hum of the computer and Ethan's ragged breathing. He sat frozen, the blue light from the screen illuminating his pale face, etching the horror of his ghastly discovery. His hand had drawn a map to hell, and now he was sitting in the center of his own sinful masterpiece. Outside, the usually peaceful Virginia night now held a palpable threat. A faint crunch of gravel sounded from the driveway, an unusual noise that, in his panicked state, Ethan dismissed as a stray animal. But Liam didn't. The boy suddenly appeared in the doorway, a small, ghostly figure. He wasn't crying or screaming. His face was ashen, and his wide eyes held a familiar terror, an alertness forged in the days of the facility. "Someone's here," he whispered, his voice sharp, cutting through the silence. "They're outside." Ethan's heart plummeted. He rushed to the window, pulling the heavy curtain aside just a crack. In the dim moonlight, he saw them. 3 dark figures in tactical gear, moving with the swift, silent grace of panthers. They hadn't come through the main gate. They were approaching from the grove of trees, avoiding all security cameras. This wasn't a robbery. This was a targeted infiltration. A faint click echoed from downstairs. Then the muffled sound of breaking glass. A dull thud that indicated they had cut and removed a pane rather than smashing it. Professional. Deadly. "Upstairs! Now!" Ethan hissed, grabbing Liam's hand. They bolted from the archives, scrambling up the stairs. A flash of light from the floor below was followed by the dry thwip of a silenced pistol. A bullet slammed into the plaster wall right behind them, sending up a puff of white dust. Ethan slammed the door to the bedroom where the babies were sleeping, twisting the lock in a desperate gesture. The noise woke Lily and Chloe. They both started wailing, their infant cries sounding like a death knell in the silent house. Outside the door, heavy, deliberate footsteps were approaching. No shouting, no threats, just the efficient silence of predators. Ethan held Liam tightly, who was shaking uncontrollably, and looked toward the 2 cribs. A horrifying truth dawned on him. These mercenaries hadn't just come to recapture Liam, an escaped witness. Their professionalism, their ruthlessness, and the bullet aimed directly at him moments ago, it all meant one thing. Donovan knew that he knew. He wasn't just here to retrieve his test subjects. He was here to erase all traces. And the biggest, most dangerous trace right now was him, the architect who had unwittingly drawn the map to his hell. Ethan was desperate. He shoved a heavy wardrobe against the door, a futile act, but the only thing he could do. He looked around the luxurious room. Now a death trap. There was no escape. The cries of the 2 babies tore at his soul. This is it, he thought. I've led these 3 children to their deaths. Ethan. A small but firm voice sounded beside him. It was Liam. He wasn't crying. He wasn't panicking. His face was pale, but his eyes were shining with a strange intensity. He was thinking, calculating. "Ethan, listen to me," Liam repeated, tugging sharply at his sleeve. "What is it, Liam? We're out of time," Ethan snapped in desperation. "I have something," the boy said quickly, the words tumbling out with clarity. "A hard drive. My mom gave it to me before she said it was our insurance policy." Ethan froze, turning to look at the boy. "A hard drive? Where is it?" "The Franklin Institute," Liam replied, "in Philly. There's a big statue of Benjamin Franklin. I hid it in a loose brick behind the base. It has everything: transaction lists, videos of what they did at the facility, everything." A spark of hope flared in Ethan's eyes, only to be extinguished. "It's useless. We're trapped here. We can't get to it." The door groaned. The lock was about to break. "You don't understand," Liam went on, his voice rushed but steady. "It's not just sitting there. It's connected. My mom set up an automatic trigger." He pointed to the simple cord necklace he wore, which Ethan had assumed was just a cheap piece of jewelry. It was actually a tiny GPS tracker. "If this signal doesn't return to a secret broadcast point in Philadelphia within 72 hours, all the data on the drive will be uploaded automatically. To the press, to the FBI, to everyone." Ethan stood motionless, his brain struggling to process the information. A contingency plan. A digital dead man's switch. "When did the clock start?" he asked, his voice trembling. Liam looked him straight in the eye. "When I escaped the facility, it's been almost 2 days." Almost 2 days. They had little more than a day left. A final, deafening crack echoed through the room. The lock shattered. The wardrobe shuddered violently as the men outside began to force their way in. But now, the fear in Ethan's eyes was replaced by something else. A cold calculation. He looked at the splintering door, then back at Liam. This boy hadn't just brought him hope. He had handed him a weapon. Donovan didn't just want to kill them to silence them. He needed Liam alive, needed the device around his neck to prevent the impending catastrophe. "They don't just want to capture you," Ethan said, his voice now frighteningly calm. "They want what you have, and that is our leverage." The confrontation was no longer about survival. It had become a negotiation for their lives. A final slam. The wardrobe was shoved back, and the oak door splintered into pieces. Two mercenaries in black tactical gear, armed to the teeth, stormed the room. They moved quickly, one aiming his weapon at Ethan, while the other swept the room. Behind them, a man entered, slowly and authoritatively. It was Donovan Reed. He wasn't in tactical gear, but in an expensive gray cashmere suit, looking as if he'd just stepped out of a boardroom meeting. His features were coldly handsome, and the smile on his lips didn't reach his eyes. "Ethan, Ethan," Donovan said, his voice smooth and deep, but laced with deadly menace. "I'm truly disappointed. A talented architect like you getting mixed up in children's affairs. It's beneath you." He glanced at Liam, who was hiding behind Ethan. Then his gaze settled on the two cribs. "And you've brought back 2 more little rats. Take them." One of the mercenaries started toward the babies. "Stop!" Ethan yelled, spreading his arms to shield Liam. His heart was hammering, but his voice was terrifyingly calm. "He had his weapon. You don't want to do that, Donovan." Donovan raised an eyebrow, amused. "Oh? And why is that?" 72 hours, Ethan said, staring directly into his enemy's eyes. "Liam set a time bomb, and the clock is about to run out. If you harm any of us, the entire world will know about Project Nova." Donovan's smile vanished. He knew Ethan wasn't bluffing. "Clever little bastard," he hissed, glaring at Liam with pure hatred. "Where is it? Where is the hard drive?" This was the decisive moment. "Let the children go," Ethan demanded, playing for every second. "Give us a car and a safe passage out. Once we're in a public place, I'll tell you its location." Donovan let out a dry, humorless laugh. "You're in no position to make demands, Ethan. Hand over the boy and the hard drive, and maybe I'll let you live." While Ethan held Donovan's full attention, he saw a slight movement from Liam. The boy was standing behind him, his small hand creeping up to his necklace. His eyes met Ethan's with a look of trust and resolve. Stall for time. That was the message. "All right," Ethan said, feigning surrender, "but I need your guarantee." A gentleman's word. He was buying time shamelessly, but Donovan's arrogance made him fall for it. "Of course." Donovan smiled smugly, believing he had won. "I always keep my word." At that exact moment, Liam's hand acted. His small thumb pressed firmly on the metal edge of the pendant. Once, twice, and then a long, sustained press. There was no sound, no light. A silent signal had just been sent. "It's at the Franklin Institute," Ethan said, finally revealing a piece of the truth to make the story credible. Donovan nodded, satisfied. "Good. Now." He never finished his sentence. From the distance, a sound began to echo. A high, faint wail. Ethan held his breath. Donovan frowned, listening. The wail grew louder, closer, multiplying into different sirens. It was no longer a single sound. It was a deafening, urgent chorus. The unmistakable sound of state police sirens. The smug look on Donovan's face curdled into disbelief. He whipped his head around, staring at Ethan, then at Liam. "No! How?" Flashing red and blue lights began to dance frantically outside the windows, sweeping across the elegant walls of the villa, illuminating Donovan's face, now pale with fury. The crackle of bullhorns ordering them to surrender echoed from all sides. The villa was surrounded. The game was over. Ethan pulled Liam close, shielding him. He looked straight at Donovan, the powerful man who, just moments before, had held their lives in his hands, now just a cornered animal. The negotiation for their lives was won. The Athelred Corp case sent shockwaves across the United States. Liam's mother's hard drive, with its irrefutable evidence of inhuman experiments and a sophisticated trafficking network, sealed Donovan Reed's fate. The trial was swift. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, his dark reign ending behind the cold walls of a federal penitentiary. More importantly, from the encrypted data, authorities pinpointed the exact location of the facility, the underground structure Ethan had unwittingly designed. A raid rescued 29 other children, the silent victims of Project Nova. They were taken to safety, given care, and began the long journey of healing their physical and emotional scars. Ethan's life was also changed forever. His name was tied to the scandal, his celebrated architectural career collapsing overnight. He lost contracts, his reputation, and most of his fortune went to settling legal issues and donating to funds supporting the rescued children. But he lost nothing that truly mattered. After months of legal battles, he became the legal guardian of Liam, Lily, and Chloe. He sold the villa in Virginia, the luxury condo in Philadelphia, and cut all ties with his old life. The four of them moved into a small stone house in a quiet rural town, with a garden big enough for kids to run in and a few ancient oak trees for shade. Ethan was no longer a famous architect. He was a father, He learned how to change Lily's diapers, how to soothe Chloe when she was teething, and how to patiently listen to Liam's rambling stories after school. He discovered joy in simple things: tending the garden together, cooking a family dinner, or just reading stories by the fireplace. One summer afternoon, as the honey-colored sunlight stretched over the hills, Liam pulled Ethan out to the garden. He rolled up his sleeve, revealing a new tattoo. The ugly, burn-scarred sunflower was still there, but now, twining around it was a vibrant, climbing ivy. Its green leaves and delicate tendrils crept upwards, covering the mark of a painful past with the vitality of the present. "It's like the plants here," Liam said, his voice clear and proud. "It doesn't erase the scar, but it grows from it and makes it beautiful." Ethan smiled, a true, heartfelt smile. He looked at Liam, then at Lily and Chloe, who were toddling on the grass chasing a butterfly. He suddenly understood. The greatest structures in life aren't built from stone and steel. They aren't skyscrapers or magnificent bridges. The greatest structures are built from love, reinforced with courage, and finished with laughter. And the greatest structure of his life, his masterpiece, was right here, in this small garden, under the warm Virginia Sunday